Okay, Rabotai, we are on Daf Gimel Amud Bet. If you're following in the art scroll, 3b3. So it's if you're trying to find it in the Gemara, it's right before the blah blah blah.
3b3.
Second wide line from the bottom on the Gemara. Okay, so if you're in the Gemara, it's over here. If everyone can see, right there. Yeah, that's where it is in the Gemara. And if you're following in the English, it's right over here. Okay, on the in this part of the page. Yes. So now we've already seen one idea so far about from this sequence of people. So we asked this question already last time. Why does the Gemara seem to have this haphazard way of stacking information? If you're going to give me a flow on the Mishnah, fine. But if you're randomly just going to stick another random statement, why did the Gemara decide to put this? We're about to learn something to do with Hilchot Shabbat. And then afterwards, we're going to learn something to do with Hilchot Mikveh. What does that have to do with Masechet Makkot? Nothing. Okay, so why? The answer is because in both cases it's a statement from Rav Yehuda Amarav, Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav, and then it's a question from Rav Kahana on the statement of Rav Yehuda Amarav. Okay, so since those two people are the people in the conversation, so we stacked a couple of those conversations one after the next. Why'd we do that? For the sake of one reason. We're enabling you to remember things. So if, as an example, I tell you, listen, Stanley and I had an argument. What did we argue about? We argued about the law in tennis. But I had another argument with Stanley. I argued with him about this. And then we said something else, right? And then there was another argument with Stanley. In each case, what you're doing is you're allowing for these three cases, which are said by these people, to kind of stick in your mind. And that was a very important feature in the Gemara, especially before it was written down. So just a little tiny recap. Initially, the Gemara and the Mishnah were not written down. Imagine we all got together and there was no pages. Okay? And I was just telling it to you all from memory. And all of you sitting here, like Nathan, with no Gemara, right? And just listening with your eyes closed, trying to absorb all the information. So we had to come up with ways that you could stack that information and it would stay. So sometimes what they did was they moved in a logical flow. Sometimes what they did was they moved in a memory flow, which allowed you to go from one thing to the next. And we've already seen a couple of times in Masechet Megillah and also previously in Masechet Tanit, where the Gemara gave you a sign by using a mnemonic, and those 5 letters spelled the 5 cases that you were supposed to remember of the machloket between this one and that one when we follow the halakha of Rabbi Akiva or some such thing. Okay? So the Gemara is employing that methodology at this point. Jonah, do you want to write from here? There's an extra seat at this table. Is it easy for you over there? Okay, fine. Maybe just move a little bit to the side so he has eyesight. Okay.
Do us all a favor.
No, you know why? You're writing for all of us. That's why. Okay. Says the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rav. If someone opens the neck of let's say like you have on your tzitzit, right? You have a long piece of material and then there's like a V-neck. So imagine someone takes a big rectangle of material and he cuts out a neck hole in the top of the material, okay? The halakha is chayav chatat. What does chayav chatat mean? It means that if you do it on Shabbat, by mistake, then there's a chiyuv to bring a korban chatat. Why did I say if it's a mistake? Because if you do it on purpose, there's no halakha to bring a korban chatat on Shabbat if you did it on purpose. If you did it by mistake, you bring korban chatat. Surely, if you did it on purpose, you should bring korban chatat. What's the answer?
Maybe it's too much.
It's not enough. Like we learned already before. A lot of times, you won't have a punishment in a worse case. You know why? Because the punishment was only enough for the smaller case. The punishment doesn't cover the larger case. We leave it to God to get you back for that one.
Would that be karet?
So there's other chiyuvim, exactly, each time. Now, I'm not going to get into chilul Shabbat, but yes, okay? In this case, so if you do avera b'shogeg, there's chiyuv chatat. What does shogeg mean? Anyone know? So literally translated, it's usually literally translated as the word by accident. But that's not That's not, it's a haphazard term, the word accident. Because, well, I'll get to it in 1 second. The first element we think of when we think of accident is almost always not shogeg. Almost always when we talk about the word accident, we're referring to in halakha is ones. Let's say as an example, walking down the street, I fall on somebody, I cause him damage. That's by accident, right? That's not shogeg. That's ones. That is completely without any responsibility on my part. Nothing I should have done. Nothing I could have done. Shogeg is, I did something on Shabbat, I forgot it was Shabbat. That means that it's true I didn't do it on purpose, but there's some level of culpability, like you should have known what date it was. Or if I did it on Shabbat, I just didn't know that I was not allowed to do this on Shabbat. Well, you should know. A Jew is supposed to know all of Torah.
Ignorance is no defense to the law.
Correct. You can't say, I did not know that killing people was illegal. If you live in New York City, it's a little bit different. You're allowed to state that because the laws seem to indicate that. Either
the person gets off the case because they didn't know. We didn't give them warning.
No, that's not this.
No responsibility.
No, that's not this. Why? Because let's say I am doing it on purpose, but you didn't get warned. So you see that's not the differentiator between on purpose or not. That's the halakha en onshin ela im ken mazhirin. Like as an example. Or you don't do Makkot unless there's edim vehatra'a. Hatra'a is a warning. Okay? So this case is, when do you bring a korban chatat? When you did something on Shabbat by accident. But all we're trying to communicate here when we use this language is that this is a milacha on Shabbat. That's the defining feature of a milacha on Shabbat, is something that if you did it b'shogeg, you would bring a korban chatat. Okay? So someone who cuts a hole like that in a beged, he's chayav chatat. Why is he chayav chatat? Anyone know?
Because he finished the garment. Maybe?
Oh, so not necessarily finished a garment, but finished a vessel. That's called tikkun mana, which means the finishing of a vessel. That is otherwise known as, in the language of the melachot, it's called makeh b'patish, which means literally the final hammer blow. The difference between this being a vessel and not being a vessel is this final act. So when I do this final act, I created something. Okay? Let's say as an example, you have a cup, but the cup has a hole in the bottom. And this last piece of metal is one hammer's blow away from being smashed shut. That one hammer blow to that little piece of metal that's sticking up, when you smash it down, now it holds water, now you have a vessel. So that one hammer blow is creative melacha. So the Gemara over here says, when you cut the hole in this, before this, it was just a piece of material. Now, it's an article of clothing. Okay? So, the halacha says as follows. Matkif la Rav Kana asks, V'chima ben zeh lemegufat chavit. What's the difference between this and to slicing off the top of a barrel? They used to have, I guess they were like pirates. They would come down for their grog, They would come, take their scimitar, right, or their scabbard, and they would, go give a nice big fat swing and slice off the whole top of the barrel, opening up the barrel of wine or whiskey or whatever it may have been. I think scabbard is actually the thing you put the sword in. But either way, is it? So there's another scarab, maybe? There's another word.
No, scarab is something you wear.
Is that a beetle? Saber. Yeah, there we go. Saber was the word I was looking for. Okay, so if you slice off the top of the barrel, what's the halacha? The Gemara says slicing off the top of the barrel is not asur, right? Why is that any different than this? In both cases, you're creating an opening in something, and you're making something into a vessel. Okay, what's the difference between the two? The Gemara answers.
The top of the barrel is meant to be taken off.
So the top of the barrel was put on. So there was a point in time where that was not on. What did we do? We then sealed it. But the purpose of sealing it was always so that at some point it would be taken off, correct? So therefore, making it a vessel is when you've done something to this which it wasn't already. Here, that's not the case. Same thing, by the way, as opening up a bottle of soda on Shabbat. Right? That seal on the top, some people think, oh, tikkun maneh. You created a bottle by opening this up. Up until that point, it was closed, you couldn't use it. Now you opened it up, you've created this bottle, which even after you dump out the soda, you can refill with water, you can fill it with pickle juice, I don't know what you want to do with it, whatever you like, fadal. The answer is, it was like that before I opened it. We just put something on top of it that was then designed, right? There's a prefab cutting around the top of the cap to be able to allow me to open it. So therefore, opening that does not create a vessel.
Could have a different problem. Could have the problem of tearing.
Okay, you could have the problem of tearing. There's a question why they don't use it over here. With regards to a barrel, that would not be relevant, right? Because you're breaking off the top. There is a question on the talit about why we're not saying it's an issue of korea. There's all the reasons for that. Let me just give you a tiny background. Anytime in melachat Shabbat, you want to say something is a melacha, it has to be creative work. Technically, tearing is always destructive work. What kind of tearing is asur on Shabbat? Korea al menat litfor. When you're tearing something only in order to sew it up. So as an example, I bring my pants to the tailor. I want to narrow the leg as an example. What does the tailor do? He thinks to himself, Shabbat, I can't sew the guy's clothes, but I could open up the leg, and then after Shabbat I'll have less work. Is he allowed to do that? No. Why? Because that korea is actually a creative work. You're not destroying something. It's part of a creative process. By the way, exactly similar. Let's say I have a building. I'm allowed to build a building. Am I allowed to knock it down?
No.
It's mikalkel. If I tear down the building, soter al minat livnot, my tearing down is an act of construction, not of destruction. So therefore, I think part of the reason why we did not say that this is korea is because it's not immediately evident in the act of kiriyah if there's a destructive purpose to this kiriyah. I am not doing it al minat litfor, but in the process, I've opened up the beged. With regards to makeh bepatish, it wouldn't matter one way or the other. Okay? Now, so the Gemara answers exactly like Morris said to us. Amar le zechibur. This case, it was connected. Those two pieces in the clothing was one piece, and then you sliced it open, creating something new. In the second case, it's not chibur because it was put on afterwards with the intention of reopening. Fascinating thought I had this when I was studying the Gemara. Is I've seen in many places they have these barrels sitting in the side of the room, and what are the barrels there for? Like ambiance, like you can see in a bar, in a chalet. Sometimes they'll have it. It makes it look like urban, woodsy, rustic. That barrel that was made by probably some SY guy from Home Furnishings, whatever. Okay, Jonah. Sorry, there you go, Jonah. Yeah, Jonah made it. That sealed barrel was sealed with no intention of ever opening it. So the only barrel that we talked about in this Mishnah is only a barrel that has the liquid in it, that you would never be creating, even if you're going to put it on for 50 years to hold in McAllen's, storehouses. The point was always that it should come off at some point. But when you're doing it as a decorative object or something that helps you climb on top of something, in such a case, that would be an identical case to the case of the beged. Okay, so that's the second case of Rabbi Yehuda Amarav that was challenged by Rav Kana. Now we're going to go to the third case. The third case needs a tiny drop of background. How much water do you need in a mikveh in order for a mikveh to be kosher? 40 sa'ah. How much is 40 sa'ah? Anyone know? Roughly.
Barrels?
Sorry?
Isn't it 3 barrels?
We're going to get to the barrels. Before we get to the barrels, how much does a regular mikveh need to be kosher? It needs 40 sa'ah. What is that? Give us an idea. It's 332 gallons. That's how much you need in a mikveh. Now, most mikvahot are much bigger than that, but the minimal size is that amount of water. How much water does that wind up being? It's the water that fills a space 1 amah by 1 amah by 3 amot. An amah, machloket, is either 1.5 feet to 2 feet wide. Two different opinions. But let's go with the strict opinion, 2 feet wide, okay? 2 feet to an amah. So it's 2 feet wide, roughly the width of a person's shoulders, okay? By 2 feet deep, roughly the width of a person who's in shape more than me, okay? So the width of that guy, okay? That's 2 amah. And 3 amot is about 6 feet tall. Roughly the width of people who are not Jewish. Okay, so you've got this size space cut out that you fill with water. What's the idea of 40 sa'ah? That's the minimal amount that it would take for a person if they were lying still to be submerged in the water. Okay, now you've never seen a mikveh that's that size. The only time you'll have seen a mikveh that's that size is in a mikveh kelim, where they're dipping the dishes. That might be the one that's close to 40 sa'ah exactly. Although, if you've ever dropped anything in one of those mikvahot, you'll realize that even though it looks like it's about yay big by yay big, you can't even reach it with your arm up until your arm socket. It's a little bit of an optical illusion how deep those mikvahot are, and you could see at the bottom sometimes. You see people have left spoons, forks, knives, 1 cup, whatever they gave up after a little while, bobbing for apples. Okay, so that is the shiur of a mikveh. Now, what does that mikveh need to be filled with? It needs to be filled with natural water. What is the psul? What invalidates that mikveh? If the water is drawn water. Drawn water, it's called mayim shuvim in Hebrew. So as an example, the water where you're filling up from a tap is drawn water. It's gathered somewhere and it's brought here. If you took buckets from the ocean, filled up your mikveh with those things, that's mayim shuvim, that's drawn water. The sugya of mikvahot is incredibly complex. So we're not going to get into it on a large level, but suffice it to say this. Once I have a mikveh that is filled and full with a kosher amount of water, if I then take a cup of water and pour it in the mikveh, no problem. You know what happens? In fact, the bottom mikveh, which is kosher mikveh water, takes all the mikveh water that you put into it, that's drawn, and it turns it into kosher mikveh water. So technically, that's how mikvahot actually work. Just a background. They have rainwater coming in. Fills it up with a hazard amount of kosher water. After that, you're allowed to put extra water on top of it because it doesn't matter. It was already kosher. Are we clear? Yeah. Okay. However, what if you don't have the full amount of kosher water? Let's say you're 300 gallons or 330 gallons instead of 40 sa'ah. You're a little bit short. And now I come in and I add a certain amount of mayim she'uvim, that invalidates all of the mikveh water. Okay, clear? Mm-hmm. How much is that amount of water? Shelosha lugin. It's used to say barrels. I went and checked it up. I don't know the difference exactly, but it seems to me to be a very small amount. If my math is correct, a log should be 16 fluid ounces. Let me tell you why. Because when they're making a cheshbon in the Gemara, it talks about a certain amount, and it says that amount is 1/64th of a log. And how much is that? A quarter fluid ounces. My mathematical brain told me that what that means is, if a kortov is 1/64th, and it's a quarter of a fluid ounce, so 64 times 4,
16.
Which gives you 16. So it should be that 1 lug is exactly 16 fluid ounces, okay? How much would 3 log be?
48.
Right? 16 plus 16 plus 16. Exactly. So if you have that amount of 48 fluid ounces, at that point, you're going to be invalidating a mikveh, which is under the amount of 40 sa'ah. Now, with that background, let's begin. The Amar of Yehuda Amarav. Yehuda Amarav says the name of Rav. Shelosha lugin mayim. 3 lug of water that were drawn, that are not rainwater. They're pasul water. Shenafal letochan kortov shel yain. Kortov means a small amount. You should recognize that word from... If you say Masechet Tani, I'm going to punch you.
Megillah.
I should have said I'm going to punch you for Megillah too.
The Ketoret.
Ketoret every day. We say it at least twice. Kortov shel devash. Right? What does kortov mean? Kortov means like a dollop. You know, when you're asking for a recipe from an Ashkenaz woman, they tell you exactly how much. You're asking from a Sephardic woman, you get no joy whatsoever. They're like, yeah, a splash, a dash, a sprinkling. It's a disaster. If you're trying to learn cooking from a Sephardic woman, give up now, okay? So, this unidentified amount, a small amount. In fact, it is an amount, but the language of kortov means a small amount. And that's why it says, if you add kortov shel devash, pisela, even the tiniest amount, it's 1/64th. Okay, so you put in a kortov shel yain, 1/64, a small amount of water into the 34, into the 3 lugin. Now again, remember, in all of the laws of bitul, when you want to tell me that something that gets mixed into something loses its status, what is the number we always use?
160.
That is partially correct.
Okay.
Normally, bitul in the Torah Midoraita is in rov. Majority. So if you have 2 and 1, right? Majority. Okay? Midrabanan, we're talking about 1/60th. Why is 1/60th a number that everybody knows? Because of another problem.
Kashrut.
In milk. Where does that come from? At 1/60th, at that point, it no longer is detectable as a taste. So at 1/60th, if you have 1/60th of a drop of milk in a pot of meat, it doesn't make it non-kosher. Why? Because the taste of the milk is not present in the pot at that amount of discrepancy. Okay? Now, this is very important. Very important. What are we talking about over here then? You have 1 kortov. How much did I tell you it was? 1/64th of a lug. How much is it mixed up into? 3 lug.
48 ounces.
So it's 3 times less than the amount that you would need, right? In order to be batel. This is not the laws. We are not talking about the laws of bitul. If it was the laws of bitul, this would be gone. This would be water 1,000,000,000%. That's not the case over here. That's not what we're talking about. What's the question over here then? When you add this tiny amount of wine into the water, umar'en kimar'e yain, the deep dark purple of the red of the wine went into this 48 fluid ounces. It turned it into looks like a rosé wine now. Okay, so what does it look like? It looks like a wine. What is it? Halachically, taste-wise, 1,000,000,000%. It's only water, but it looks like wine. Seeing that that's the case, ask the Gemara, v'naflu mikveh. Now they fell into the mikveh that has less than 40 sa'ah. Lo pesaluhu. So Rav taught that this look-alike wine, which is really water, okay, it does not posel the mikveh. Now that makes no sense. What do we learn? If you put 3 lug of water into a mikveh that's not 40 sa'ah, what does it do? Ruins the mikveh. This tiny drop of wine doesn't change the status of the water. So it's clearly 3 lug of water. So why does it not invalidate the mikveh?
It's 3 lug of water and this kortov.
And this kortov.
So it's more than 3 lug.
More than 3 lug, yes.
And if it's considered water, it should invalidate it.
Should invalidate it. Rav makes no sense. And not only that, you can't even say that it's not water. Because the laws of bitul will tell you in every other halakha in the Torah that this is not wine. There's no question here that this is halachically water, okay? And yet Rav says, lo pesalu. Why? Because there's 2 questions. Do we go according to what it is, or do we go according to the color, according to what it looks like? That's a fascinating question. Why in the world would we think to go like what it looks like?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Let's assume that you put in 4 lugim of wine into the mikveh water.
No problem.
No problem.
No problem.
Why?
Now you might need to add more water. It might not make the mikveh kosher, but it doesn't posel the mikveh. Okay?
What's the difference?
The difference is that the only thing that we said is posel the 40 sa'ah is 3 lugin of water. Okay? So now, sorry? Of ma'im shuvim.
In this
Okay?
case, does it change,
And this is ma'im shuvim.
did it change the color of the rest of the water?
No.
So maybe that's why, because it makes it distinct or recognizable. So in the case of the chalav, right?
Yeah.
The taste is recognizable.
No, it's less than 60, it's not recognizable.
Right, but more than that is recognizable by taste.
Okay.
This is just recognizable by sight. It's not,
Okay.
it's not, the color is not recognizable at that level.
So you mean the water color is not recognizable?
Watercolor.
Yeah, but still, why would I assume all of a sudden that the rabbis are painting by color? You know, why would we think that in this place of all
Because in
places
the mikveh, we're not
that should be the
drinking
case?
water.
So, but again, this would have to come from somewhere. This idea that we're going to follow the way the thing looks and not the way we follow in every other sugya in the Torah. Nathan.
Are you assuming assuming that you're precisely at 37 sa, because if you were at 39 sa and you put 3 in, you're only really putting 1 in, and then whatever you do after that, it's already kosher.
Well, let's just deal with the fact that it's saying that it's pasul, not that it's making it kosher. Okay? Let's imagine you would need to add extra water. I don't want to complicate the issue. Okay? But we're saying it doesn't make it pasul. But why not? It's ma'im shuvim. Clearly, Rav is holding that we're going to follow the color. Okay? Matkiv la Rav Kana. Rav Kana asks a question. Is there any difference between this and metzeva, water that's colored? That's literally what you just told me. That this water is not wine, but it's colored, and we're going to follow the color. But when it comes to colored water, what do we learn? The Tanna Rabbi Yossi says, tzeva, metzeva, what does it mean, water that's colored? It means that they used to use in a tannery, interestingly enough, for those of you who have been coming to Mincha, and we've been doing the halachot of Netilat Yadayim in between Mincha and Arbit for 60, 90 seconds every day. One of the things we talked about was when the color of the water of the Netilat Yadayim changes color. That's coming from this, okay? From this sugya. So Rabbi Yossi says, if you took dye and you put the dye into the water when you're preparing the dye, so now this water has a color to it, okay? It makes even if it's 3 lugin, it makes the mikveh pasul. And it's not a lot of dye. It's just enough dye to change the color of the water. Okay? And still, colored water, what do we see clearly in the Braita from the Mishnah from Rabbi Yossi? We see that colored water is posel, ruins the mikveh. So how could Rav say that it doesn't? The Gemara answers, Amalei Rava, Rava says, Hatam over there, Maya ditzave mikri. Over there it's called specifically in the Mishnah, colored water. In other words, there's no one doubting that this water is just water. It just has a color because they put the dye into the water. However, when it comes to wine in water, hacha over here, chamra meziga mikri. This is a massive chidush. What Rava is saying over here. Rava is saying is when you mix a little wine in the water, you know what it is already? It's already considered wine. Now hold on a second. Now here's a funny part. It's a tiny. No, you cannot make kiddush on it.
Usually, you can make kiddush in half wine, half water.
Here we're talking about the tiniest fraction. It's in the mixture of shlosha lugin. It turns out kortov turns out to be 64 times 3 is 192. 90.
192.
192nd. It's nothing. It's the fraction of a fraction of a fraction. And Rava is saying, with that tiny amount, it's already called diluted wine? What the heck? So you have to understand also, there's a little bit of an element here, which is cultural, okay? They were always diluting wine. You have to understand that. All of the sugyot on Shabbat about mozgin lo, kos, they pour water, they pour wine.
That way we put 3 drops.
Yeah, but it's part of it. Okay, so they were, at the time, they always had this super heavy, thick wine that was almost undrinkable. And then they were mixing water into it to be able to make wine. So this process of pouring wine into water, right, was already considered something that they were doing all the time. The minute you start, sorry? So it's not that, in that case, yes. But it's not that I'm saying over here that look, it's an extract, it's concentrate, so therefore it counts as higher. I'm not saying that. I'm saying in a culture where you're always mixing wine into water, what do people say when they see a guy pouring wine into water? It's already a colored. Well, what do they think he's doing? They call it wine. So in other words, it's not that it's any more wine than it was 2 seconds ago. It's not weak wine, exactly. It's still exactly just water. What I'm explaining in Rava is that culturally, or like one of our dear friends used to say, depending on the context, that wine is now, that water is now called mixed wine or diluted wine because it's the beginning of a process, okay? Anyway, so Rava answers that Rav is not arguing on this opinion. Rav says it's not posel, even though me'etzeva is posel. Why? Because what do you just call it? Colored water. Colored water is water. Okay? Poured, diluted wine is very watery, but it's still wine. Okay? And therefore, like we said earlier, like Mars pointed out, if I was to pour 3 lugin of wine in, it would not be posel the mikveh. The mikveh. The Gemara says, "Va'atani Reb Chia." We learned in a bright that Reb Chia says, "Horidu with mikveh." In this case, where you took a little bit of wine, you poured it into the water, and now that mikveh is now pasul because of this. So you see, Reb Chia is directly opposing Rav, and Rava, your answer that that's colored water doesn't apply because the Braita of Reb Chia was specifically talking about water mixed with a little bit of wine. The Gemara says, Rava answers. I just want to hit an aside. Can I pause for 1 second? Want to hear something fascinating? Rava, again, is defending Rav's opinion. There's a sefer called Migine Shlomo. Migine Shlomo, he was buried in the cemetery of the Ramah in Krakow behind the shul of the Ramah. I've been there many times. What's the sefer of Migine Shlomo about? Well, what does Magen mean?
Defender.
Defender. Migine Shlomo means the defender of Shlomo. Who's Shlomo?
Rava?
Side of the Gemara. Rashi. The whole book of Migine Shlomo is written as a extended defense mechanism. David's shield, arrow, defense missile shield against Tosafot's attacks on Rashi. The whole book, beginning till the end. Open up Megillah Shlomo. In the introduction to his to the Sefer, there's a foreword to the book that when he passed away, he came back to his son-in-law in a dream, and he told him that when I got to the heavenly court, Rashi came out with all of his students to greet me at the gates of the Gan Eden, to thank me for guarding him from the lions of Tosafot. And it's there in the forward of the Megillah Shlomo. So I was just thinking about that. You know, they attack Rav. Rava comes to the rescue. They attack him again. Rava comes to the rescue. I'm just imagining Rav coming out to greet Rava, at the entrance of Gan Eden to thank him for guarding him. I don't know. I feel like I need someone on my side. Who's my guy? Yeah. Yes.
Can we just go through that again?
Yes. What did we just do? Rav said wine and water doesn't posel. Okay? Gemara said, what do you mean? I found the Braita that says colored water is posel. What does Rava parry with? He says, oh, that's colored water. This is not colored wine. This is watery wine. Okay? Vahatani Reb Chia, the Gemara then parries and then thrusts. The Gemara says, but I found the Braita that says explicitly, if you mix watery wine into the mikveh, horidu, you ruined it. You're posel. So you don't have the answer of playing the game water versus wine. So what is Rava going to do? Amar Rava answers, Lo kasha. It's not a question. How Rabbi Yochanan Menuri, this opinion that Rav says follows the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan Menuri. So there's a machloket in the Braita of Rabbi Yochanan Menuri and Harabanan, and the other opinion, the Braita that you brought from Rabbi Chia, that follows the opinion of the Chachamim. Titanan, because we learned, the Mishnah says, Shlosha lugin mayim. If you had 3 lugin of water, chaser kortov, lacking 1 kortov. So in other words, you had 190, 3 lug of water, missing 1 kortov, minus 1 kortov, okay? Missing 190 second, okay? And then you added to that, shenafal letochan, kortov yain. You added 192s of water into it. It fell into emareo kemare yain, and the color now looks like the color of wine. Why does the Gemara keep saying that? To exclude if white wine fell into it. If white wine fell into it, there's no question, because it doesn't change the color. If you had rosé that fell into it, also it wouldn't change the color. The Gemara is telling you that we're talking in a scenario. It doesn't, but it tells you that it's a scenario where it changes. It's enough, that tiny amount, to actually change the color. So it would have to be a deep red in order to be able to do that. Umar ehen, what's the one? The one that we had? Pap Clement. Okay? Umar ehen kemare yain. The color is the color of the wine. V'naflu the mikveh fell into the water. Lo pesaluhu. It does not invalidate the mikveh. Does not posel the mikveh. Okay? V'chen shlosha lugin mayim. Also, if you have 3 lugin chaser kortov, missing that amount, shenafal tochan kortov chalav, that you mixed into it that same small amount of milk, and that milk was enough to change the water. Umar en kimar mayim. It changed the color to the water. So in other words, the milk that you added left the water the same color as it was before, like the white wine I just mentioned. V'naflu l'mikveh falls into the water. Lo pesalu does not posel the mikveh. Rabbi Yochanan Menuri Omer. Rabbi Yochanan Menuri says hakol olech achar hamareh. Everything goes after the sight. Now let's be clear. The Gemara seems to be saying that Rava was saying that Rav is going according to one of these opinions. One opinion said that it does not posel the mikveh. Rabbi Yochanan says it goes after the visage, okay? That's the two opinions. And Rav says it's going according to the one that says it's not pasul. But the Gemara is going to pick up on something that I'm sure some of you picked up on already, but just weren't sure if it was the same way as it was before. Because I saw at least one of you go like this. So if you did that, you were right. Did you do that? Anyone do that?
What does do that mean?
Look back at what we just saw before. I'll explain in just a second, okay? Now, let's just look very carefully. What did we say up until now? It says a kortov of wine fell into a mixture of 3 lugin
Of water.
minus a kortov of water.
Oh, just now.
So what is that 3 lugin? Not 3 lugin.
No, it's less than 3 lugin.
It's less than 3 lugin. What did we talk about before?
3 lugin.
3 lugin plus the kortov. Here we're talking about 3 lugin minus a kortov, made up by the last kortov is the kortov of wine. So what are the chachamim actually telling you when they tell you it's not posel? They're telling you that in our case, it would be posel. Because remember, what invalidates a mikveh? Not 3 kortov of wine. 3 lugin, just not 3 lugin of wine, 3 lugin of water. Over here, you don't have 3 lugin of water. So by the fact that they tell you 3 lugin minus a kortov, made up by a kortov, doesn't invalidate, what are they actually telling you? That in our case, it does invalidate. So therefore the Rabbanan is going, according to Rabbi Chia, that says it's pasul, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who says that everything goes after the way it looks. Whose opinion is he following? Rav, that says that we go after the look, which says that it's wine and it's not posel. Okay? That's Rava's answer. And the whole thing is on the diuk, hanging his hat on the diuk of chaser kortov. Yeah.
So if you put the milk in, and it's considered white, it's considered water, that violates the, doesn't invalidate the kosher, the mikveh?
Are you going chaser kortov or 3 lugin?
3 lugin.
So 3 full lugin, and then you add.
Even if you take out the kartov.
Okay, you took out the kartov.
And you put in
the milk. So we said over here, we said already, then that doesn't invalidate it according to anybody.
But the color is white. The color is clear.
Clear. Yes.
It's considered water.
No. Why? Because you don't have 3 lugin of water.
Rabbi, could you one more time give me the interpretation in English of lugin and kortov?
Okay, lug is, kortov is 1/64th of a lug.
It's a splash.
Okay, the smallest amount. Less even than would be make it pasul.
It's a quarter ounce.
Gotcha.
Let me drive you crazy for a second. If I put non-kosher wine of that amount into 1 lug, you'd be allowed to drink the water. Yeah, we're 1/64th. And not only that, we're now talking about that amount in 3 lug.
So you're talking about a drop.
A drop of a drop as compared to. Okay? Now, says the Gemara. The Gemara says, so I like what you did, Rava. You just defended Rav very well. But you backed him into a corner. You made Rav hold like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Why is the Gemara not like this?
Is he less than Rav?
Sorry? No, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is, what do we say about Rav again and again? Rav is,
straddles.
he's the guy who's both. So Rav could be whoever he wants. Right? I love that, that's great. Right? Rav could be whoever he wants. He ain't no Swifty, but he could be whatever he wants. Even if he's a
I
tweener.
don't know Ben Nuri who he is.
But he's one of the Tanaim. But what did we say already last time? We said that it doesn't make sense that a later opinion is going to say that the halacha follows the opinion of the single shita versus the Rabbanan. Who would you think the halacha is like? The Chachamim, all of them? Or Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri? They're all of them. So how is Rav going to come out according to the opinion that's the singular opinion? He wouldn't say that halakha. That's why the Gemara doesn't like this, that you painted him into being one opinion, Rava, okay? The Gemara says, Hame baye that Rav Papa asked this question that you're asking exactly. The buyer of Papa, Rav Papa asked Rav Tani, Chaser Kortov Beresha. Rav, when he read Chaser Kortov, that we just saw in the beginning, that it's not a full 3 lugin. Aval, did he understand? Aval Shlosha lugin the Tanakama, Pasle? Is that how he read it? If it was 3, then it would be Pasul, right? Is that how we read it? Like we read it just now? So then Rabbi Yochanan would be coming along and saying, Hakol holech achar hamareh, and he's arguing. Everything depends on how the actual color looks. Virav Omer, then according to that, like you said, Rav is going to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Or Dilma, Rav Papa asked this as a question, or maybe Rav lotane chaser kortov beresha. Rav did not have, in his Mishnah, he did not have the words chaser kortov. He had shlosha lugin. Rav Yochanan ben Nuri ki palig, asefahu de palig. The whole machloket of Rav Yochanan ben Nuri and the Tanakama, that whole machloket, because they were also saying that 3 lug with a little bit of wine is not pasul, which means that they also are going after the way it looks. So what's Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri saying? Everything follows the way it looks. What is he arguing on? Asefahu de palig. He's only arguing on the second part of the Mishnah, where the Mishnah said if you add a little bit of milk, right? Rav Yochanan ben Nuri was saying, no. You're telling me it doesn't invalidate. Why? Because you don't have, it's milk, right? Rav Yochanan ben Nuri is saying no. In that case, since the milk colors the water, even though it's not a different color, but it colors it a little bit, hakol holech achar hamareh, and therefore it does invalidate it. According to this reading, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is more strict, and he's making the milk in the water to be something that's pasul. So according to this, Rav Papa was wondering, how did Rav understand this Mishnah? V'Rav de'amar k'divrei hakol. According to that, Rav would say the opinion in wine. He didn't talk about milk. He never dealt with the milk. So Rav would actually be following an opinion that everyone agrees with, which is 3 lugin of water, which has a little bit of wine in it, does not invalidate the mikveh. So Rava, why are you stating as fact something that Rav Papa considered to be a question? Okay? That was a lot of info.
You knocked us over. I'm totally confused.
Okay, so let's
You got to go slow.
Let's review one more time.
Word.
Okay, let's review one more time.
I don't get it.
Okay, good. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear the emet that if someone doesn't get it. Okay. Now, if Morris doesn't get it, I'm sure most of us didn't get it. Probably me too. Right? Ready for this? The Gemara is saying as follows. Did you understand up until this point what Rava just told us? Rava just told us that Rav is according to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. And what does that opinion say? That when there's a little bit of wine mixed in with the water, that it does not pasul the mikveh. Okay? Now, that's how Rava said.
Rava.
And what does Rava say about this Mishnah? He points out, he hangs his hat on the fact that the Mishnah says the words chaser kortov, which means that the Chachamim in the beginning that said less than 3, a drop less than 3, that has wine in it does not invalidate, indicating that what did they hold if it was 3? It would invalidate it, okay? Does Rav agree to that? No. Rav says it doesn't invalidate, right? So that would mean that Rav can't hold like the Chachamim. Who does he hold like? Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri then says, no, everything goes after the way it looks. That sounds exactly like Rav. So that's what Rava says. Rav Papa, the Gemara asks, Rav Papa actually was concerned. He asked this as a question. He didn't know the answer to this. He was always wondering, is Rav, according to the opinion of Rav Yochanan ben Nuri, the way you just said it, or maybe Rav did not have the Mishnah the way you have it, that it says chaser kortov. He has it the same way he says it, that 3 lugin with a little bit of wine does not posel the mikveh. 3 lugin of water with a little bit of milk is not posel the mikveh. Okay? Comes Rav Yochanan ben Nuri. Rav Yochanan ben Nuri says everything goes after the way it looks. Says Rav Papa, so what are they arguing about? If he holds 3 and a little bit of wine is not invalidate, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri holds that, what are they arguing about? In that version of the Mishnah that Rav Papa was considering that Rav had in front of him, in his version, It never said the word chaser, which means that the rabbis also agree. 3 lug with a little bit of wine, not posel. But then what's Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri arguing on? The Gemara answers, he's only arguing on the second part of what they said, which is on the milk.
The milk.
When you have the milk mixed with the water, and then it changes the water to be a little bit cloudy, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri argues, they say it does not posel. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says it does posel. Why? Because everything goes after the way it looks. And the cloud is enough to make it look not like, water, okay?
You would see the red wine also.
Sorry?
You would see the red wine also.
The red wine
The
is
color,
diluted.
it's also
Yes,
color.
but yes.
It would also
That's what makes it not pasul. If you see it, then it's not pasul, right? If you can't see it, then it is pasul, right? That's the way it works.
So
the
you
opposite way.
confused me before because you said something different.
What did I say
Now
different?
You went back on it.
What did I
So
say
before
different?
you said Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri maintains that it invalidates it.
Yeah.
Now you said, like it says here, it doesn't invalidate.
No, it does invalidate it. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri in the second version
It does invalidate it.
says the opposite of what he said
Looks like
before.
water. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what throws people.
Got it.
You know why? Because the whole time you like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is the big cheerleader for Rav, and now it sounds like the opposite. But it's not the opposite. Why? Because he only ever argued on milk. Rav never talked about milk. So what Rav in his lane is talking about, i.e. wine, in this version is according to everybody. So the Gemara is now asking on Rava, why did you paint Rav into a corner? To make him hold only like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri in that version of the Mishnah, when you could have actually had him hold according to everyone in the second version, which in fact Rav Papa always was wondering what the case was.
Why are there 2 versions of the Mishnah? It seems like they're just giving an out clause for all this.
Well, Rav
Like
Papa...
it's like, okay, you didn't have that version of the Mishnah. Where's the other version of it? See what I'm saying?
Oh,
You said there's 2 versions of the Mishnah. One
Yeah.
has not and one does not have. Right? Like one is saying chaser and the other one does not say.
This was the version we had. Rav Papa wanted to know, maybe Rav had a different version of this Mishnah. And the reason why he's assuming that is like we said, because why would Rav be posek halacha like Rav Yochanan ben Nuri, having a Mishnah in front of him that says that the rabbis will argue on Rav Yochanan ben Nuri?
So there could be 2 different versions.
So he's
of the Mishnah.
asking as a question, maybe Rav's version of this Mishnah was different.
but ultimately no.
We don't know.
Oh, we don't
Rav
know?
Papa leaves it as a question. Rava decided. Okay? The Gemara answers,
I'm sorry to bother you. Maybe you already said this. Why does not colored invalidate?
not colored invalidates is because
Colored does.
water is what ruins the mikveh. 3 lug of water. The only get out clause of this is the fact that it doesn't look like water.
So water is the worst.
Water's the worst. Okay? If you put 3 lug of wine in, it wouldn't make it invalid.
That. And I think that's what's so confusing. Why is water the worst?
Excellent, great question. Because since the gezerah over here some of this was midrabanan, they were very, very careful for you not to do the thing that they thought you were going to do. No one's pouring 3 lug of water in, of milk in, or of wine in to fix the mikveh.
You might mix the water.
But you might mix water in. Oh, it's a little short. Let me add the water. So they went majnoon and they poseled the whole mikveh so that it should be my natural waters. But the minute it's already wine, or looks like wine, or you might think it's wine, the slightest thing that makes it not the thing that they were worried about, already the gezerah is not on. Okay? Now, says the Gemara.
That was the key point.
That is the key point. Yes, yes. And that's what we want. I
That
wanted
was
to.
what was so confusing.
Yes.
Because I think we were all looking at like, how could it be that the non-colored
Marcus, did you do
item
that?
is
That was
worse?
the key point.
And by the way, that's why I'm waiting for this question, the whole sugya. That's why I set you up and said, it's a weird halakha, because there's no other halakha ever in any other part of the Torah that makes us think that this is wine. What's the answer over here? So you said before, because we're dipping in it, not drinking it.
Yeah.
You were very close. But I was waiting for someone to challenge me on it, and that's the reason. Because the whole thing was a gezerah
It
b'drabanan.
was smart to do that.
Very smart. All the gezerot of the Rabbanan were for this reason. They knew human nature. They're not worried about someone dumping whiskey in the mikveh. Especially because it's not going to make the mikveh kosher. They're very worried about someone who realizes his wife needs to go to the mikveh. It's a little short. Hadda's ready for mikveh night. He's going to go dump whatever he puts in the mikveh. Okay? Now, says the Gemara.
Trust me, Rabbi, it's the truth.
It sounds like a man who's done it. Okay. Rav Papa mibayele. Rav Papa, the Gemara says, Rav Papa mibayele. Rav Papa has this as a question. L'Rav apshitale. Rava holds. What are you asking me? I said something. You're asking me why are you sure someone else has a question? The Gemara answers, okay, so they have a question, and I'm sure. You can't ask me why I don't also have a question. I'm sure. I'm very confident in my opinion. By the way, Emmanuel, maybe the reason why Rava was confident is because Rav Papa's second part of the question is conjecture. The first part of Rav Papa is based on what we have in front of us. Okay? So the Gemara's answer is exactly what you just said. Okay? Now, I think should we leave this for next time? I think it's only a little bit more. Let's just finish the last piece. Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, okay, Lo shmi'a li hashma'ata. I never heard this opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Amarav. You're telling me this opinion that you're stacking it with me, with all the Rabbi Yehuda Amaravs and Rav Kahana's. I never heard this before. Amar le Abaye. Abaye said, At amart la ni'alan. What are you talking about? You told us this. V'hachi amrit ni'alan. And this is how you said it to us. Abaye was the student of Rav Yosef. So he was telling him, Rebbe, you forgot, but you told it to me. I remember that you said it. What did you say? Dirav lotani chaser kortov beresha. Rav did not have the braita of chaser kortov, missing a kortov in the beginning. Rabbi Yochanan asefa palig. Rav da'ama kedivrei hakol. Rabbi, you're telling me you don't remember that you taught that this whole line. Not only did you tell us the line of Rava of Rav, you also told it to us like the second opinion of the second side of the question of Rav Papa, that Rav did not have the line of Chaser, and therefore he was going according to all opinions, Rabbi Yochanan and the Tanakama. And when was Rabbi Yochanan arguing? Only on the case of the milk. Okay, so now we have finished our immersion.
Everyone put the red,
in the mikveh.
red stopper.
We're on page 482. That's where we're going to pick up from Be'ezrat Hashem on Thursday. Baruch Le'olam. Amen.